call the Board of Supervisors to order. Mr. Hohen, may I have a roll call, please?
Supervisor Chiome.
Here.
Supervisor White.
Here.
Supervisor Horton. Supervisor Schutte.
Here.
Mayor Bagwell.
Here.
You have your quorum.
Thank you so much. We're now, let's see, is Tyler from LifePoint here? Don't see him. So we're supposed to be on invocation, but why don't we just start with a great hello. Today is International Happiness Day, in case you all didn't know that, right? So it's pretty spectacular. So we'll just celebrate today with that, and then we'll move on to our Pledge of Allegiance. Miss City Manager Paulson, would you lead us, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ms. Paulson. We're now on to opening public comment. Speak at beginning of meeting. So requested by Ed. Want to come on up?
Good morning, Mayor and Board of Supervisors. My name is Edward Chocolate.
Can you turn the mic on?
Oops, sorry. Green.
Here we go. Good morning, everyone. My name is Edward Chocolate. I'm here today as a citizen. I also serve as a volunteer on the Mayor's Housing Committee that is working to solve the homelessness situation here in town. And I also serve on a national committee with the St. Vincent de Paul Society focused on homelessness prevention best practices. So today I'll keep my remarks brief, but as a citizen, I just want to let it be known that I am currently opposed to the proposed ordinance regarding the homelessness that's going to be on the agenda later today. And I want to just ask a couple things. So first of all, there's 3 websites that are known to be experts in this field. So I want to share that with you. So the first one's National Alliance to End Homelessness, National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty Criminalization, and one called Housing, Not Handcuffs. Since the Grants Pass case, I think there's been over 160 new municipalities or counties that have looked to pass new ordinances regarding the homelessness and camping and public access because of that case. During the case, and it's in some materials I left with the secretary, there was an amicus brief filed, which means it's a neutral filing. This is by 57 social scientists that have researched the effects on ordinances with the homeless over 10 years. And so I did present some summaries of that research, and the amicus brief is 55 pages long, so I did not want to make copies of that. But the bottom line is that these ordinances do not reduce homelessness. They do not help the homeless. They hurt the homeless. And this is what the research is showing. You'll see on these other websites, there's been other studies done, one in 2021, one in 2019, and pretty much what the research and the social science research is showing is that, once again, these are more harmful than helpful. I will refer you to 3 entities: Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Houston, Texas, and Minneapolis, St. Paul are cited right now as probably the 3 best cities dealing with homelessness since 2020. They all have reduced homelessness where most cities have not reduced homelessness, and none of them have these ordinances. They are doing other things, other innovations. In fact, in Milwaukee, there's a unique partnership between the Milwaukee Downtown Business Development Association and the county and city that actually staffs people to work with the homeless in the downtown business district. So they thought it was important enough to finance these. Probably the most recent big news is the city of San Diego, which isn't that far away, but it's a lot bigger than here, obviously. They just reversed their ordinances. They figured out that they lost $30 million enforcing these ordinances because nobody was paying fines. And yet
So-
they had to put people in jail.
Excuse me, Ed. thank you for submitting your material, and I'm sure we'll all take a look at that, but.
3 minutes, thank you.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it. We're now, Lynn Berggren signed up? You're gonna do beginning of meeting? Okay, Jed, we'll take care of you after Lynn. Nope, you're up. Green.
There we go. Hi, everyone. My name's Lynn Berggren. I'm a resident of Carson City. Was born here when it was about 5,000 people. Now we're at 60,000. Definitely a lot more challenges. I'm kind of following what Ed was speaking about. I am talking about the homeless situation. I'm a volunteer of Knott's. Most of you know what that is, Night Off the Streets. I just got off a shift, literally 45 minutes ago. So as a volunteer, we operate a warming center here in town 5 months out of the year. We had 59 people last night, packed into the Methodist Church. So in 10 days, our warming center ends. There's going to be 59 people on the street. So are we going to, if they sleep in the park, are we going to arrest all of those people? I mean, what are we going to do with these people? They're not criminals, but they don't have anywhere to go. So it's an issue that I think that the community needs to address, not just with our churches and our volunteers, because I can tell you after the end of 5 months, our volunteers are exhausted. We do these shifts, some shifts are midnight to 4 in the morning, 4 to 7:30 in the morning. Weekends, holidays, it doesn't matter, the center is open to keep people from freezing to death. It started 8 years ago because 4 men froze to death here in this city. So what I would love for the board to do is come to the warming center and see what it's like, see what we do. I know Lisa's been there. I don't know if any of you else have been there. You might have been there on a day when I wasn't there, so I don't know. And then come to one of our meetings and talk with us, because I think as a city, we need to do this with our businesses, our volunteers, our churches, the city. We all need to do this together to work on this issue. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Block?
Ready now?
What a pain. Hi, Mayor, Board of Supervisors. For the record, Jed Block, citizen. I've got remarks for the agenda item. However, I've read the white paper for the town square, and I think it's an amazing project. Looking a gift horse in the mouth doesn't happen very often. I'm afraid that we've all been here so long, after a while, sagebrush starts looking good, and all these parking lots have been invisible for years. So I'm 100% in support with the Hoppe May Adams Town Square project.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else signed up for opening public comment, but Mr. French?
Thank you, Mayor, and Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I have to ditto everything that's been said this morning, except for we have some differences about the town square. I personally think that was put off or put on the agenda and expressed in a way at Fuji Park that I think had a lot of people on their heels. It was more of a, this is in action, this is going on, instead of a discussion about what might in the future. But the ditto on the sleep issue, I personally am dealing with a real struggle with sleep issue. I have sleep apnea and some other issues with the neurological. And not being able to suggest that if I'm at a park and I happen to be reading and fall asleep into my book, that if I feel secure enough at that park because of the sheriff and because of observation and being where I'm safe, I should be maybe arrested for having done so. I think it's just inhumane, and I think we need to look at those matters differently. And off the street, I just applaud the individuals, the volunteers, and their efforts. Today, I'm here also to bring up the fact that I feel that the airport, I went to their meeting last night, I looked at their material and such, and they're right on line. They've got expenses and considerations that they're having to address, but I just want to applaud them for their efforts, and I'm looking forward to seeing maybe that restaurant get built. But today also, I'm here to suggest that I had a discouraging situation. The timer wasn't going. Is someone not? I'll pay you later. The deal is, I do try to keep track of those things. And my public engagement is not because I don't think people are doing a good job. I want to know what's behind the job. I want to know the people that are behind the decision-making. And I personally do not feel at this time discouraging consideration from the last open meeting. And I don't know how many people heard, but I was frustrated with the fact that Parks, Recreation seemed to take over those meetings when those meetings are to discuss the open space and the very careful use of it. And I don't feel they're getting that support. Conservation easements do mean something. What was done on Prison Hill, in my opinion, was done as an afterthought to something that was missed. Eyes rolling. Afterthought as to the fact that they didn't take care of those mitigation considerations when they did the building below Prison Hill. And they're making up for it where they did. They had put in a fire break. They could have put that trail in that fire break and had two birds with one stone. There are many roads that they're mitigating now because they don't want to have all the hill just roads and streets and trails. They're being very careful to make sure that they limit those so that the remaining sage and the beauty of the nature there is still preserved, and I appreciate that. But we should not have put a road in, and that's my opinion. But on to that, as to what to open space is really about, I feel that as long as it's under the cover of recreation and parks, it will be considered just another park, and it will be utilized as such. There are some areas people shouldn't be, and it should be limited as it will be on Prison Hill. And they're going to do everything they can to educate people about staying on prescribed trails and keeping people from riding or diverting off into the natural sage and to the habitat. And I feel that's a big plus. And if they keep on that, great. But I think open space focus has not been directed to its intent. I read over the intent, I read over the duties and responsibilities, and I'm finding them cutting short on that. And that's my personal opinion. It's not a litigation against individuals of the group, but I think that the format is set up not for discussion. And I was actually told, why come? Really suggested that I don't need to come because everything has to go by the mayor. So just keep coming if I have any considerations or concerns, not to them, but to you. So you're stuck with me as I will deplete my time at open space because I do not feel that they're representing open space, and I may show up on occasion, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Do I have anyone else that would like opening public comment? Okay, then I'm going to move on to the agenda. We're on item number 6, approval of our minutes. Does any member see any corrections or changes needed? If not, Supervisor Giomi, a motion.
I move
Oh.
to approve Carson City Board of Supervisors meeting minutes from February 20th, 2025 as presented.
I second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. We're now on to our special presentations, which is our length of service certificates. If you'll join me on the floor, we'll take care of that. Oops. Take the- So I think there was a few of these. So we're going to start with Josh Carter, Deputy Sheriff, 20 years. 20. Come on up here. 20 years. All great years, right? Yeah. Oh. I was trying for the happiness day. Here you go. Thank you. Yes. Oh, see, there you go. We worked. What do you got to say?
Lord, Josh has just been a mainstay in our detention facility
for the last 20 years plus, whatever. It's just been fantastic. He's a guy I can go into the jail with any issues or challenges or misunderstandings and walk in there and rely on somebody to be able to, steer me in the right direction and keep me from going off course, and training new hires inside the jail, working with the NPRA program. That's that pre-release program for people to get out of the jail. Josh has just been a mainstay. I could not appreciate it more. Incidentally, Josh was one of the guys that started a beard little thing, but it was uncomfortable. It itched or something like that. Yeah. Thank you, Josh. I really appreciate everything you've ever done for us. Thank you.
Stay right there. Yeah, see, you have to be in a picture in a moment or it doesn't count. Okay, next up we have Edgar Hinnes. I'm not getting it right. How about Edgar? Come on up. How many? I just skip it. Thank you so much. He is our fleet service technician. 10 years? All in fleet?
Yep.
That is dedication, and I forgot. So you're kind of close to the retirement, but I'm still going to say, no? 20 more. I see that nod. How about 10 more, 20 more? Oh, we have it on record, so we have to hold you accountable to that. But I think so. I think so. Thank you so much for your service. Who's going to, Rick?
Good morning. So Edgar started with us as a part-time mechanic while he was going to TMCC to trade school. So when he finished, we were able to grab him, pick him up. He's currently a certified ASCE master mechanic, right? Is that, anyway, so he can work on everything we've got. And so it makes him real valuable. He just currently finished an engine replacement in an ambulance. Keeping those costs in-house saves money, saves time. Edgar's been a joy to be with us, and 10 years down, many more to go, I hear. So that's what we're looking for. Appreciate your service, Edgar. Thank you.
Okay. And then last today, we have Miguel, and I'm not, Lozano? How about Miguel with juvenile probation officer? Okay, now this is 5 years. So I definitely get to ask for 25 more, right? Oh, see, I'm getting good answers. Good answers. Thank you so much for your service.
So congratulations, and thank you for being here. I know you love being here in Spotlight. It's your favorite thing. But so Miguel came to us from the Department of Corrections. He worked in the youthful offender program where these kids were certified as adults for really serious offenses. And he worked there, and I think that's maybe where he found his passion, working with really troubled youth. So he came to us as a juvenile probation officer and currently serves as our range master and also our gang specialist for the department. He's done amazing things for this community, especially as it relates to all the gangs in Carson and building relationships with the gang members and also their families. He's done amazing, incredible things. He is well respected by his community and also by his colleagues. And I'm so very appreciative of everything he's done for our department and the loyalty that he has. Thank you, Miguel.
So it is the proverbial picture time. So if there's family, friends, coworkers that want to jump in the picture and celebrate their achievements, come on up and we'll get a picture. Well, come on. Isn't that what it's all about? Oh, how old you guessing? 4? 4? Close. Is that Daddy? Oh, see? Oh, it's going to make a beautiful picture. See in there with the camera? Look at the camera. Again, thank you all for your service. It's so very appreciated. Thank you. Okay. All right. Just a moment. Oh, she's cute as a button. Okay, we're going to come back to the agenda. We're on the consent agenda. Did any member want an item pulled? If not, Supervisor Giomi, a motion, please.
I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item 8A, 9A, 10A, 10B, 10C, 11A, 11B, 11C, 11D, 12A, 12B, and 13A, all as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. We're now on to agenda item 15A, discussion and possible action regarding the appointment of 2 at-large members to the 911 Surcharge Advisory Committee, each for a 2-year term beginning in March 2025 and expiring in March 2027. Ms. Paulson, is Ryan here?
Ryan is here, yes.
Okay, come on up. You're green. Go backwards. That's okay. Thank you so much for applying for this position and coming before us today to talk about it a little bit. We'll maybe just ask you a little bit of questions, and then we'll be working towards making our decision today to put you to work. Oh, right? Let me just be clear. You got to do work. So, Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you would like this position?
All right. Good morning, Mayor and Supervisors. My name is Ryan McIntosh. I'm a resident of Carson City. My parents moved here in 1995 when I was 11 years old. It's been my home since. But the last 22 years, 23 years, I've been a public safety professional. I currently hold the role of assistant fire chief for a neighboring fire district, and I've worked my way up through the ranks. And a big part of that was some of my duties as assigned were to work with our dispatch center, program radios, write radio code plugs, deal with CAD and interface. So I've got 20 years of experience working with 911 communications and also public safety. It's kind of my why. Most of my career, the last 22 years, has been focused on my profession. And I've been somewhat ignorant of my own governance of the city I choose to live in. And I feel that I have a skill set that I could provide some service back to the city of Carson, where I choose to live, raise my kids, and where my wife also is employed. So that's my why.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Giomi?
Ryan, thanks for applying. I'm interested in your thought process and what criteria you might use to evaluate and prioritize competing projects when faced with limited funding.
Yeah, good question. Thanks, Supervisor Giomi. Prioritizing funding when you have a limited revenue and, like most things in government, a very long list of competing expenses and requests. How to prioritize those? I think it's best when you get the proposals from each of the departments that are asking for those enhancements or improvements of the 911 system to be able to answer the emergency calls, is to be able to work within the committee and also the staff to rank those based on the most efficient and effective implementation to achieve the objectives of the surcharge as outlined by you guys as the governing body. It is a delicate balance of trying to figure out where to spend the money, how to spend the money, who gets awarded this and that. But really it comes down to the priorities set by you and what you would like that money to be spent on, and then working with staff and the committee to make recommendations back to you on how to spend that money.
Supervisor White?
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So is the 911 master plan in good shape? When should it be revised and updated?
According to the Carson City Municipal Code and also the state law 244A on the 911 surcharge, the 5-year master plan has to be reviewed at least annually. I did not see the most current master plan. I did read the code and the law, but I was not able to find the master plan itself. I look back at the agenda items for the last several months and actually all the way back to 2019, just to look at what the topics were that have come before the advisory committee for recommendation to you. So I even read January's minutes from the last quarterly meeting, but I have not been able to find or review the master plan.
Thank you.
Supervisor Horton,
No questions.
Supervisor Shutey.
I'm gonna, what do you see, so on the issue of the master plan, what do you see as important inclusions of a 911 surcharge master plan?
Yeah, you know, it's our role in government is to provide for public safety for our citizens. And part of that is for our citizens to be able to rely on their ability to dial 911, get a dispatcher on the other end, and that dispatcher to be able to deploy public safety professionals out to answer that call of need. That system has to be very reliable and almost function instantaneously, where that there's minimal delay to being able to help our citizens improve their safety. So every component from that initial dial of 911 to getting that public safety professional on scene to answer the service call is basically the way I understand the 911 surcharge to work. So is that everything from the reliability of the phone lines into dispatch, the backup system, but also the call taking software, to the CAD dispatching software, to the radio communications that go over the repeaters that then hit the public safety professionals' radios, and also the alerting systems in their cars, in their fire stations. But also it goes a little bit further. The law to have a body-worn camera on all of our law enforcement officers, and the records, and being able to provide those records, but also the video recording on the dashboards of our cop cars or our sheriff's office cars. That's all inclusive of the surcharge. It is a big duty or responsibility within that surcharge, and you know that's where the surcharge comes from, is the ability to be able to fund those things that help our responders respond. And the dollar per line, each access line within the city gives a pretty good budget. Being in public safety myself, prior to being able to use the 911 surcharge in another county, we struggled with being able to fund dispatch improvements and purchase of radios and cameras and everything else. You have all these needs and these mandates with no funding. And that's where the 911 surcharge in that setting really was able to help do what it was intended to, and that's improve communications from the 911 caller to the public safety professionals knocking at their front door.
Thank you so much, and thank you for applying.
Yeah, thank you.
So Ryan, is there anything else you would like to share with us that hasn't been covered with one of the questions?
Not necessarily. I just thank you for your time and the invitation to be able to interview in front of you. And I do think that this is a good step forward for me to be able to be more of a fulfill my civic duty to the city I choose to live in, and learn more about the governance of the city. And appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for applying. Really, it's appreciated. Thank you. So Ms. Carpenter had an issue come up, and so she was unable to attend today. But we have two positions open. The sheriff has indicated both candidates look good. So we have the option of appointing both Ms. Carpenter and Mr. McIntosh. Does Supervisor Giomi, your pleasure?
Make a motion. Move to appoint Ryan McIntosh, Jessica Carpenter, each to a full term beginning March 25 and expiring in March of 2027.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for appointment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous, and it is get to work now, right? Careful what you aspire to, but thank you again. It's really appreciated.
Can I just make a quick comment? Ryan, thank you so much for your very thoughtful answers. And, you know, I think just what you said and shared really gave a wonderful description of the role of the 911 Surcharge Committee. And it's a committee that a lot of folks don't understand. So kudos to you.
Okay, We are going to move on then to agenda item 15B, discussion and possible action regarding coordination of legislative activity on pending state legislation before the legislature and any opinions we may wish to share. Mr. Gresh, would you take us through this item, please?
Good morning, Supervisors. Cameron Gresh, Carson City Government Affairs Liaison for the record. So for today's update, I have some general legislative activity summaries and then some more specific activities Carson City's been performing regarding two pieces of legislation, and then kind of taking you through the schedule of the legislature as it pertains to the next couple of weeks. Before I get any further, though, I do need to remind everyone that the list of legislation that Carson City is tracking is available on carson.org/legislature, also on the top page of carson.org, but that's just the direct link. So anyways, Monday, the 17th, was the deadline for individual legislator BDR introductions. So while that doesn't mean there will be no more new BDR introductions, it will be much, much less, as now it is only committees and leadership legislators that are able to introduce things. So we got, over the past week and a half, something on the order of 50 to 60 new bills introduced, and we are currently going through those right now, and I look forward to updating the board at the next meeting on the kind of total picture of legislation as we know it right now, because now that we're past that deadline, we have a pretty good idea, and I'll go into a little bit of what the general themes are this 83rd session. But April 11th is the next major deadline. That is the first House passage, so both in the Assembly and Senate of the bills we are tracking, inevitably a significant number will not advance and some will. We are working to determine the likelihood of what will and won't, and I look forward to giving you an after action report at the next board meeting. But kind of moving into Carson City specific legislative activities. So the first bill I want to go over is AB 152, and by the way, both of the pieces of legislation I'm going to talk about have been previously agendized. AB 152, if you'll recall, is the historical records exemption bill. Mayor Bagwell, myself, and Assemblyman Ken Gray, the sponsor for that legislation, participated in a bill hearing for that bill on Tuesday. We answered the questions very thoughtfully. Legislators had plenty of questions about making sure that the bill did not restrict access to historical records. And Mayor Bagwell and a little bit of me, but mostly Mayor Bagwell, was able to assuage the committee's fears that these do not alter access to public records. They simply alter how government is required to give them, if at all. And so that is one of the major activities regarding hearings. The other would be SB 116. This is a process. SB 116 is the pay raise bill for county elected officials. It alters the funding formula that county commissioners are entitled to. It did pertain to Carson City, as we are a consolidated municipality. We worked heavily with Senator Daley and really the entire coalition of counties through NACO, the Nevada Association of Counties, to provide input on this bill in the form of an amendment, which was presented at the hearing, fixing some funding formulas that would have made it so that certain deputies of county elected officials could actually wind up making sometimes significantly more. It was mostly a math fix in our case. And so that is the feedback we gave, and that is what was reflected in the amendment at the meeting. The bill will next be up for a work session, hopefully sometime in the next few weeks. I have not seen anything on the agendas as of yet, but I know that this is a big priority. So we expect that to be happening relatively soon. I would like to also just touch on AB 32, our own bill for the V&T Railway. So this, pardon me, I want to go back in just a little bit. We did have a hearing on that bill. We were the very first bill heard by the Assembly Growth and Infrastructure Committee, and now we are going to get a work session today at 1:30 p.m. I will be in attendance along with V&T Railway Commission Vice Chair Clay Mitchell, Story County Commissioner also. Work sessions generally do not involve public input. We will be there in a purely informational capacity in case legislators have questions or possible amendments to our bill. That being said, as of this time, no amendments or comments have been submitted through Nellis by anyone. And I have heard from no legislators any issues, questions, or concerns about this bill. So while I'm not going to sit here and prognosticate, I will just say that we don't expect too much of an issue here in this work session, and I look forward to providing you an update at our next meeting. So moving on to general themes of the legislature this week, expanding public services was a major theme, along with workforce regulations, particularly as it relates to health insurance. And there are several bills pertaining to public employees regarding air quality and obesity or conditions caused by morbid obesity as they relate to insurance and those kinds of things. So that's what we're tracking in that realm. Lots of education policy reforms, but I'll go ahead and skip over that because that isn't as relevant to us as it is to some other local governments. Though, if anyone has any questions, I can try to answer. That's not my main area of expertise, but I'm always happy to go further. Government affairs, both the Senate and the Assembly, which is certainly where we focus most of our legislative effort given the committee's jurisdiction, considered several bills related to affordable housing, transportation, and historical recognition. Some of the bills here really focus on affordable housing, and accessory dwelling units are becoming, you could say, a trend in the legislature, and provisions relating to where they are or not allowed, particularly in historical districts. And so that's kind of just a general overview of what Senate Government Affairs is doing. And I'll just quickly go ahead and dive into the Assembly Government Affairs Committee, which focused more on public works, financial administration, and then some cultural recognition issues. We have public works contracting laws. We have collective bargaining agreement bills being debated there. And then, of course, just because it's been discussed in previous meetings, Carson City Treasurer Andrew Razor is in his capacity as treasurer for the president of the Nevada Treasurers Association is testifying right now in support of AB 133, which is the bill that he came up in public comment to discuss at our very first legislative meeting. That creates the technology fund that his office would be able to dip into to help pay for certain record-keeping technology. And that's kind of just a general overview. This is just an informational session. As bills die or get passed, we will have more substantive discussions down the line. And if the board would like to take a position, certainly I will have some recommendations. But as of right now, we are still working to amend most of the legislation that we're interested in. However, we are doing so in close coordination with our city and county partners in the Nevada League of Cities, the Urban Consortium, and the Nevada Association of Counties. And then with that being said, I have my notes here, and we have the bill tracker. And other than that, I open the floor up to questions from the board.
Supervisor Giomi?
On SB 116, I mean, I saw this before, but it didn't register with me. But what the state has listed a fiscal note. What fiscal note could the state have put on a bill that counties are funding?
We have questions about that too, and I'm conferring with Vincent Guthreau, director of NACO, on what that means. The state did not, to my knowledge, participate in the hearing, and I have very little info on what their input would be, though I have seen the fiscal note. As of motivations or context, I don't have much for you at this time, but I am working with NACO to figure out what, if any, advocacy needs to be performed there.
Yeah, I don't see how the state has fiscal impact.
I am also confused.
Don't get it. Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Okay, is there any public comment on this item? No? Okay, thank you so very much. Appreciate it. Okay, we're now to agenda item 16A, discussion and possible action regarding a business impact statement concerning a proposed ordinance prohibiting unauthorized sleeping or camping in public places, and to introduce on first reading a proposed ordinance prohibiting unauthorized sleeping or camping in public places. Mr. Hohen, may I have the title, please?
An ordinance relating to public safety, establishing various provisions prohibiting unauthorized sleeping or camping in public places, providing penalties, authorizing the removal of persons and personal property from public places under certain circumstances, making conforming changes to provisions relating to disorderly conduct, making conforming changes to provisions relating to camping in general, and providing other matters properly relating thereto.
Thank you so much. Ms. Paulson, will you give us a briefing on the business impact statement, please?
And the business impact, we found there are no trade associations or officers of businesses that would be affected by this ordinance. So therefore, there was no one that we were required to send the notice to.
Thank you so much. Mr. District Attorney Pruitt, would you take us through this, please?
Thank you, Mayor. For the record, Garrett Pruitt, Carson City District Attorney. So as this board will likely recall, I believe it was last August, I was here providing a legal update to the Supreme Court's decision in Grants Pass that regulated use of public property as it pertained to camping and other ancillary uses to that. So following that meeting, this board tasked the Carson City's Office of the District Attorney with drafting an ordinance to address many of the issues that were raised there. And so that is exactly what we have undertaken to do. As this board will note, the intent of this ordinance is to preserve our public place for the lawful use and enjoyment of all persons, and to ensure that we have peaceful enjoyment and unimpeded access for all persons here within Carson City. At the end of the day, we want Carson City to be and remain a safe and vibrant community for all of those who reside here, all of the families who reside here, and that each feels that they have the ability to safely walk at night, use our parks to their fullest utilization at any time that they may wish to do so in accordance with the law. As the district attorney, I support this board's goal in maintaining that safe and open public use of all public spaces for the public, and therefore I support the ordinance that I have to present before you today. Now, this is what we would call a conduct-based ordinance. This is not a status-based ordinance. As the Supreme Court noted in Grants Pass, it would be illegal, unconstitutional to have a law that directly criminalizes status. This does not do that. This addresses conduct. And so in preparing for my remarks today, I've read many things that either people have sent to me, that I have seen posted online with respect to this ordinance, about a myriad of concerns associated with the proposal that is before the board today. And so there are some things that I do want to quickly address, or essentially dispel, of what this ordinance does not do. First, this ordinance does not criminalize poverty. It does not. It does not criminalize the sitting on park benches. It does not criminalize the reading and sitting and using our libraries. It does not criminalize falling asleep in parks. It does not criminalize taking a rest during a bike ride. It does not criminalize relaxing in the downtown area, utilizing the benches, or any of those things. It simply does not do those things. And most importantly, when looking at this bill, this is one aspect of this board's ability and this city's ability to address an issue that does plague many cities here across the country, that deeply impacts people. But this this ordinance does not prevent the use of services that are widely available in this community. All of those who may find themselves without a home, in need of mental health services, in need of substance abuse services, in need of food and other things, Carson City is an excellent community that provides a myriad of resources to all those persons. There is nothing in this ordinance that prevents that use, that stops people from seeking those services today, tomorrow, or any other day of the week, so that they can better place themselves in a better position and not suffer the issues that are currently plaguing them in their life. Another thing that I had noted is many had wondered, why is the ordinance necessary? So in looking at the necessary portion of this, it does fill in some gaps in the municipal code. There are several provisions here that did not previously exist, and I will get to each one in a moment. It provides necessary definitions, and it also provides a limiting instruction that is designed to prevent overreach and protect the citizens of Carson City in each and every way. And in cleaning up some of the other areas of the code, specifically with disorderly conduct, we also put back in what we would call a mens rea element in the law. It's essentially the intent element, and it's going to better mirror the current state of the Nevada revised statute. So I will get to that as well. Before doing that, I would like to propose two technical changes. The first of those is there is a legal authority reference to Carson City Charter Article 2, Section 2190 that I would propose being removed. It's in the lead line of every section of the CCMC in this ordinance. The citation was an inadvertent over-inclusion in this. It is not a public health record. I will give, in a long conversation with Supervisor White, who noted this one, this is an important distinction. This is not designed to be used to enforce other types of public health ordinances, closures, or those things. This is to ensure the safe and open enjoyment of all parks, recreation spaces, and open spaces within Carson City. So I'd ask that that citation be removed throughout. Now, also, one more is adding of a pinpoint citation. The pinpoint citation would be added in the proposed section 8.03.110. And if you look to subsection 1, there's a notation to any personal property that is removed from a campsite pursuant to, and it currently lists CCMC 8.03.100. Right in advance of those words, the citation addition will be paragraph B of subsection 1, the idea to provide specific clarity as to how the ordinance should be used. Now, I'll start first with moving into the definitions here. There are several important definitions. In looking at drafting of this ordinance, it is the intention of the Carson City District Attorney's Office that we have an ordinance that can last the test of time. We fully understand that as times change, the persons in charge of addressing issues within the city change, departments change, functions of departments can alter as this board determines what is in the best interest of Carson City. The ordinance is designed to move with the city as it grows and addresses all of the different types of challenges that it can come from it. So we have notations here defining authorized official. We also provide a definition of camping and campsite. So I did see many comments to note, well, it was, previously there's an ordinance that says that you can't camp in a park. There was not a definition that defined what that was. And so that is obviously of great concern. The last thing we want to do is find our park rangers or our law enforcement officials or any other persons seeking to address these issues that don't have the sufficient definitions that allow them to do their job in the best way possible. So it provides that definition of campsite. The definition of campsite that we had selected specifically comes from Grants Pass. This is one of those areas where this has been evaluated by the Supreme Court of the United States. And so that is why, if you read them, they're practically mirrors of one another for the definition. I will note with this specific definition, I had seen some comments that perhaps this criminalizes the ability to have a picnic, throw out a blanket, take a nap in a park because that's a campsite, or you're going to put up a small stage structure in the park, whether it be a tent like that as you enjoy a game. It does not do that. There's a limiting piece in here right in the middle of that section which notes that any of the items, whether it be the sleeping bag, the bedding purposes, all of that, established or maintained for the purpose of creating temporary place to sleep, shelter, and inhabit. This is not, that it gets rid of all of those. The goal is not to preclude people from using our parks and spaces as they normally would. There's also portions in here that define dangerous or unsanitary objects or items, and personal property as well. And I will get to those as they apply to each of the provision as we go. So perhaps the one that has generated, or where I have received a good bit of ire and actually a good bit of support as well, is 8.03.080, this first proposed section here. In 8.03.080, and I will read this portion, it is unlawful for any person to sit, lie down, or sleep on or encumber with any item or object, interfere with or impede access to or from any public place or property, including without limitations, sidewalks, right-of-ways, alleys, and it goes on to include a list of locations and areas. And perhaps one of the most important sections to consider here. This subsection shall not be construed to prohibit any conduct or use that is directly incidental to and normally associated with the lawful and intended use of the public place or property. This is incredibly important, as this board will likely note in the current version of the disorderly conduct statute that currently criminalizes the laying on of sidewalks and those things. That limiting portion is not there. It's currently not there. This further protects the public, it protects people. The idea being here, obviously, all of these areas are to be able to be used by all members of the public. Benches are for sitting, they're to be used. Benches are not for camping on, as would be here. They're not to make it the daily place to sleep or those things. They're to be used by all to prevent the de facto privatization of public areas meant for all being used by one for a purpose that was not intended by the city for those uses. And so that to me is incredibly important. This statute as written prevents any type of that hypothetical overreach that I think many people are concerned with. One of the other things that I have noticed and I've seen questions on is, well, who decides what that lawful, normal, and intended use is? It is the people of Carson City. So it is this way in nearly all of the laws that we have on the books within the state of Nevada and within the United States itself. What we don't have is a code system that lists specific conduct that is only allowed to be done and only things to be available. So when it comes to deciding who is there, so there are a number of layers of protection here for the general public and for people in general. One, before a citation could be issued, an officer would have to have cause to be able to do that. So they would have to find that, yes, this is well outside of that normal intended use. I'm sure they will receive guidance from the sheriff, who has an elected office within this county, which is subject to the will and desires of the people. If that citation or arrest were made, that referral would then pass to the office of the district attorney, yet another separate office for review to determine whether that matter can be proved. If it is not an intended and normal use of that property, it could be addressed there. If anything were to then go from there, it would move on to the justice court. From the justice court, again, another separate elected individual would be able to review that and determine, does this fit within the statutory construction and goal of this community? If yes, they could make the determination there. And then, if there's an appeal to that, that would move to the district court, yet another position within Carson City, to be able to evaluate that lawful and intended use. And this is no different than many other laws that we have. I think the easiest example, if anyone were to pull up our self-defense laws here within the state of Nevada, which are generally within 200.150 to 200.200, you find a myriad of definitions that come down to reasonableness, whether actions had a pressing nature in order to respond, whether there was sufficient provocation. And again, you have a number of terms that are provided for in the NRS. And the ultimate question is, well, who decides what's sufficient? Who decides what's reasonable? The way that this statute is written is to function in the exact same way as the other laws that we have written within this state. There's a great deal of discretion that is involved here. Having worked with our sheriff's department for almost 10 years now in the enforcement of many different types of statutes in this community, I have seen our deputies work diligently to help people get services. But at the end of the day, sometimes people do not want to avail themselves of those services, and this is where these types of laws come in. I would much prefer that each and every person who finds themselves without housing, who finds themselves suffering from mental health issues, drug addiction, or anything else that has put them in a place where life has become very difficult, avails themselves to all the services that we have here in the community. But at the end of the day, each person has a choice that they can make. They can avail themselves to those services, and I do hope they do, or they cannot. But if they choose not to, it is not incumbent upon this community to tolerate an action that otherwise inhibits the peaceful enjoyment of use of the public areas that are funded by the taxpayers of this community. And this is where these portions and these types of laws come into play. There were other questions as to the punishments for these types of laws. It's noted as a misdemeanor. A misdemeanor is the de facto minimum law here within the state of Nevada. Our definition of a misdemeanor comes in CCMC 1.08.010, and it mirrors that of NRS 193.150. When it comes to applications of penalties within the state of Nevada either provides ranges or maximums. For a misdemeanor may be punishable by up to a $1,000 fine and up to 6 months incarceration in the Carson City Jail. It is not a requirement. There is nothing in this statute as written or as I would foresee being applied in any way that forces or places a $1,000 fine on any individual who is cited in this case. In fact, in my almost 10 years prosecuting crimes here, in crimes where persons were found to continually be sleeping on the sidewalk or other areas, impeding access and those types of things, I can't recall off the top of my head a time when a judge has imposed the fine. What I have seen is the judge place conditions directing the person to services. If a person refuses to comply, I have seen jail time imposed in limited cases, but generally that's after community service has been exhausted, probation has been exhausted, and all the other things to try and help the person get back on track and get where they need to go. But again, that comes down to the discretion of the court, so there is no mandate for $1,000 fines or anything like that. Now, in moving on to some of the other sections here, we have the camping in public spaces prohibited. This outlines exactly how and where camping may be prohibited. There are exceptions. There are events that take place within this community that are either sanctioned by this board or city management itself where those have been made appropriate. And so there are processes to utilize our parks and other open space and recreational facilities as they were designed to be used. Now, one of the biggest issues that had come up across the country, and this was noted in Grants Pass, is if you do end up in a position where you have a large illegal campsite, what is it that you do with the property? How does one go about enforcing that? And how do you protect an individual's property? It is not lost on me or those in my office that those who often find themselves in a public encampment have little property in the grand scheme of things. And what they have is extremely important to them. And I am mindful of that. And we took great care in drafting this ordinance to reflect respect to that property that they have. The ultimate goal is to reunite persons with their property, ensure that it stays with them. The last thing that I want to see is persons being separated from their property unnecessarily. So, as this board will note, in 8.03.100, if the campsite or area is occupied, the officer or whoever is the authorized official in this case can give the person who is otherwise currently at that time would essentially be breaking the law by that public camping, time to clear their effects. The goal being that they're there and we want them to make sure that they have all of the items of property that are important to them. It allows for no less than 1 hour, so if all they happen to have is a backpack and a sleeping bag, and that would be it, they would still get that hour. And then at any time after that, a reasonable amount of time. Obviously, there are times when people have more stuff and it may take them more time to gather and safely collect their belongings. However, at the time that they vacate the property, should they leave other items behind, that is abandonment. No different than many other times if persons leave items in a public place and they have chosen to leave them there, that is abandonment under the law and it's reflective of what is already currently within the Nevada revised statutes. Now, when it comes to unoccupied campsites or property, great care was taken here as well, recognizing that while an individual may have an unauthorized campsite and unauthorized location, they may be out either obtaining services, doing something else, whatever it may be that they're doing. And what we don't want in place is that all of that property that is important to them is just tossed, thrown away, or anything like that. And this sets forth very specific provisions that notices will be required. They will have 24 hours notice. How property will then be collected and maintained. What are the obligations in the maintenance of that property? How much time that they then have to collect that property? Because as I said, the ultimate goal is that all of that property would be returned to that individual. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of choices that the individual makes in this process. Upon receiving that notice, they do have the opportunity, obviously, to collect and pick up their own property. Nothing prevents that. There's nothing that prevents the action of maintaining one's own personal items of property. For whatever reason, if it was cleaned up and they were not there, the notice is placed to let them know, hey, this is where your property is, this is the inventory of what was taken, and this is what was done, so that they can then go and collect their property. The ultimate goal is that they maintain their personal possessions, but it will take action on part of the individual to go and collect those personal possessions and pick up the things that they need to do. Now, there is a portion in here about the inventory and storage of that property. So this is consistent with many of the opinions that I did find that govern this issue across the country, as well because these are items of personal property, that any community that is engaged in the process of cleaning that up does need to maintain them in a way that they can be, in a reasonable way that they can be picked up by the individual, and so that they have time to do that. And this statute sets forth those items as well. It also addresses, and I believe this specifically came up, and this is in one of the definitions that we had, how do we determine trash versus the non-trash and all of those types of things. And we had added items, obviously, of sentimental value. So it just wasn't one of those things of monetary value. I believe we'd had a question specifically from Supervisor White last time of, if an officer doesn't see it as monetary value, or whoever's cleaning that up, but it's someone's picture, that obviously has serious sentimental value. So we wanted to make sure we added all of those terms in, and that's exactly what we did, so that people would take care of those items, so that people would be able to obtain them on the back end of this. So in moving to the next section, I will move to section 2. There's brief change here. This adds in the maliciously and willfully element to disturbing the peace and quiet of persons, family, or neighborhood, and goes on to cover the rest of the statute. The maliciously and willfully mens rea element, or the intent element of the statute, was lacking. If you look for disturbing the peace under NRS, it is in place in there, and this conforms us with the laws of the state of Nevada, and this is how the statute should be written and should be enforced. And so this is important because obviously there are times when there's incidental conduct where things get loud that aren't meant to be willful or malicious. It's just part of living and enjoying life. And this further protects citizens from those types of things. Now, if officers are called out to an issue and may provide a warning to an individual like, whoa, this has gotten out of hand, or wherever this is, they've been placed on notice, and continuing beyond that may constitute the willful and malicious conduct. But this provides greater protections to the citizens of Carson City so that they may continue to peacefully enjoy their own properties in the public areas. In section 3, provisions here further define, obviously, that there is no lying down, sleeping, or lodging in our public parks or open space areas between sunset and 8 a.m. Those are the times when those parks are closed. There's not the normal limiting instruction that we found in the first provision, because at the end of the day, it is not permissible within the time frame in accordance with the standard park hours. So our parks are not meant to be used as camping locations, and all the other issues that can come from that. And so those are the provisions that I have drafted before this board. I am happy to take any questions from the board on any specific provisions, or to address any concerns, proposals that this board may have.
Does any member have a question? Supervisor Gioni.
First, thank you. That was a well presented summary of what you did. I really appreciate the insight and the background, and the fact that you addressed some of the concerns and high points, if you will, of what you've heard. I very much appreciate that effort. In the definition for dangerous or unsanitary items, one of the things that just came to mind for me is needles. And in your opinion, does it even need to be mentioned, or is it, I understand it's not an all-inclusive list, but I just know that there are instances where, needles are a concern to people, and it seems like something that could be thrown in there, but just wanted to get your thought on that.
I did not include, Garrett Pruitt for the record, I did not include references to needles or other items that may be considered illegal in this area, because the sheriff's office has a method of dealing with those, as do our parks department and those. And so in order not to replicate or create inconsistency with other areas within the CCMC, I did not specifically include those types of items.
But it sufficiently addresses that. And then my other question is actually in section 2 regarding disorderly conduct. We frequently, it seems like once or twice every year or so, we get someone who wants us to implement a noise ordinance in Carson. And, in my opinion, there are a lot of difficulties in enforcing noise ordinances. So I guess my question for you is, in this disorderly conduct component, do you believe it's sufficiently worded so that if there is excessive noise from a party that goes on, that this could be used in that case to help abate or deal with that issue?
Garrett Pruitt for the record. I do, Supervisor Giuми, I do believe it can be used to address those things, but it allows for I think the sufficient protections to be in place. I would say it would likely be a poor use of resources on a noise ordinance to have officers walking around with decibel meters when they have
Completely agree.
clear other issues to address. And there are times and places when loud events and celebrations of life and all other things are more than appropriate, and there are times when they do get out of hand. But I think, especially with the addition of this maliciously and willful element in there, if officers have visited, they have done those things, and individuals have chosen to disregard, and it is otherwise just now disturbing the peace and quiet, and we're at a 3 a.m. issue. This places, I believe, law enforcement in a better position to better deal with those issues, but also not to get involved in ones that don't rise to that level.
Perfect. I think the best way to address noise is to make sure your neighbors get invited to the party. So it should take care of any issues that you might have. Thank you, sir.
Supervisor Shooty.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the wonderful explanation and clarification. I also appreciate the conversation that we had. And so I just wanted to revisit that this ordinance, the objective of it is to reduce the behaviors that encumber, interfere with, and impede access to and from public property. It's not about making homelessness illegal. It is to really allow public property to be used as intended by everyone. Is that correct?
Garrett Pruitt for the record. Yes, that is correct.
Great, thank you. My request is on section 1302.190, and this is as it's stated, it says 1302.190, it's toward the back.
610.
The very back.
610.
What I found when people wrote letters and shared concerns, and even in public comment, the misunderstanding of the sleeping, lying down, or lodging in a public park, and some of the concerns, if somebody falls asleep while reading. And so in the second sentence in the ordinance, you explain the when, but I would ask, if at all possible, if in 1302.190, in that first statement, it could read, lying down, sleeping, or lodging in public park or open space prohibited between sunset and 8 a.m., except in specific areas designed for such purpose. I understand that it's stated in the next statement, but I think it just makes it clearer right from the start in the event that next sentence isn't read.
You may.
Garrett Pruitt for the record. As far as the amendment, I can tell you most of the titles that we selected were meant to be as concise as possible. It's a proposal. If this board would like to entertain that proposal and add that additional language, it doesn't encumber or change the statute. It does add length to the title, which makes it a little less inconsistent with the rest of them. And I do think because that one is short, it becomes a restatement of the exact law itself. But if it is this board's desire to add the words sunset to 8 a.m., and this board would want to move on an amendment on that, I believe they could. I do think it would make it less congruent with the remaining titles.
And I appreciate that, and I'm comfortable either way, but I think it, adding a little more clarity and specificity might help calm some of the concerns. Thank you.
Mr. Yu, did you want to comment on this specific item that was just discussed?
So if I may, Madam Mayor, just like to chime in on that and provide some additional input. So for purposes of drafting these lead lines, I'm going to echo the DA's sentiment, but I also want to address Supervisor Schuette's concerns because I think it's a valid point that's being made on the record. So one of the things that I maybe want to propose on the record off the cuff here is to address that concern, instead of lengthening it, maybe actually truncating it, which might actually serve the same purpose. So instead of having it read currently lying down, sleeping, or lodging in public park or open space prohibited, maybe just removing that last word prohibited. And so what that means then is that lead line only addresses the circumstances of lying down, sleeping, or lodging in public park or open space. And then when you actually get into the text of that section, that will actually specifically address the circumstances under which that's unlawful or lawful.
I love that. I think that exactly addresses my concerns. Thank you.
Happy to make that change for the board.
Thank you.
Supervisor White.
Thank you. And as Supervisor Schuette said, thank you for the emails and conversation that we had. As you and I talked about on page 607 at 8.03080 in paragraph 1, where it says you can't sleep, lie down on, encumber any item or object. I would look for an amendment to that with language. It indicates you can't sit, lie down, or sleep while encumbering any item or object or interfere. And that really puts it to what we're trying to do, because frankly, I really don't care if somebody's sleeping on a park bench or sitting down or lying down. That's not something that I find is egregious to the point that it should create an action by law enforcement. So I don't know what the language should actually be there. I would leave that to Mr. Yu, but I think we need some language that says you can't be encumbering the public right-of-way while you're involved in sitting, lying down, or sleeping.
Mr. Pruitt, do you have a comment on that?
Garrett Pruitt for the record. It can be added. It does alter the enforcement significantly in the sense that if you add the while, I can certainly understand the context that you're looking at. The questions then become the areas off to the side. Does that specifically encumbering? Is that otherwise still affecting the use? It greatly restricts the authorized official's ability to address those issues. If that is this board's intention, those can be added. But as drafted, the goal with the saving, I guess, statement underneath that it would not affect those persons that are lawfully using it, that's specifically why that is there. But I do fear that if that is added, that will limit the ability of enforcement as it's currently drafted to address the myriad of different issues. And I can come up with them all that law enforcement or other authorized officials will encounter.
Okay. As you and I spoke, I think for the public, some clarity is really needed here to relieve some of the angst that we have heard. So if we go to page 608, 8.03.100, paragraph 1A, right there at the bottom where it's talking about property to be removed and disposed of in any manner reasonable and customary for the disposal of such property. Can you maybe give some definition or some idea what that really means?
Garrett Pruitt for the record, I'd be happy to. So it's written out as reasonable and customary, understanding that whoever the authorized official is going to encounter vast types of property. So reasonable disposal for something, say like a needle, is for a sharps container, it's going to have its own customary method of disposal. Reasonable disposal for an item that may be contaminated with drugs is going to have its own manner of disposal. An item that is otherwise contaminated with feces and urine will have its own manner of disposal. And then you have items that are basic trash items. So in lieu of providing or drafting an exhausting list that tried to establish or cover every type of item, we put that it should be done in a reasonable and customary way. And for those who are trained in this area and dealing with those types of things, they do have training on how to address those common different types of items to make sure that they're safely disposed of, not only in the clearing of that area, but that safe disposal is important for the protection of the rest of the community. And there are already ordinances and laws within the state and the country that govern different types of disposal depending on the objects they come across.
Thank you. And on the same page, moving down to paragraph B, again, down to the last few lines. The authorized official must communicate to an appropriate local agency. Can you give some clarity on what that appropriate local agency might be?
Yes, and so we did not specify a specific agency because we recognize that as this community grows, changes, and develops, that agency may change, that best person to fill in and address this may change. So it is written that the contact should be made. So whether it is determined that it should be Health and Human Services, whether it is determined that perhaps they want them to reach out to a different nonprofit or something like that, that would be done. But the goal here is that if the tagging of that campsite or unauthorized area is done, that also those persons who provide those important social services can be notified so that they can then visit those areas as well as people are picking up their things and making sure they're taken care of, to let them know, hey, this is the places where you might be able to go. Here's the other services available within the community. This is just one extra step to ensure that if persons find themselves in this position, that they can be provided with additional resources from those who know best on how to better the position they're in.
Again, thank you for our previous communication, and I think that communication and what you've presented today, I think puts this ordinance in a good place. And thank you very much.
Supervisor Horton.
Good morning. District Attorney Pruitt, I think you've done an excellent job, you and your staff, on drafting this ordinance and preparing it, and your presentation was outstanding. And I appreciate all of your hard work and all the questions that you answered for not only me, but for the rest of us. I know we've been, pretty persistent on some of this stuff, but I think you're in a good spot. And I feel like the ordinance as written, with the exceptions you noted in the beginning of your presentation, is more than sufficient and plenty of detail. And I have great confidence in our law enforcement officials in this city and the judgment that they exercise in enforcing not only this ordinance when it comes through, but all ordinances that we have in the city. And I know that they do a great job, and I think we can move forward without any worry. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I really want to talk about is the balance that I think that this ordinance brings. And that's really what it's all about, is you're balancing different needs of different groups. We can't always all agree on what the best answer is for everyone, but I think this regulation or proposal here does a better job than the existing rules to help those that might be in need, by requiring a referral for an agency and notifications, by protecting their inventory and their stuff. None of that existed in the current rules that we have. I believe this is actually better for them. And so I hope that after all this explanation that the community will realize that's what it was aimed to do, to protect both parties, right? Because you also have the public that wants to walk into the swimming pool and feel safe. So I think your opening comment kind of got lost maybe a little bit for things that we as a board face a lot of times from the general public saying, I want to be able to use the library and feel safe. I want to use the swimming pool. And I think that this ordinance does that for both parties. And I hope that after today's explanations, you see that it's really in the best interest and that That's what we've done here, is trying to protect the general public to be able to access and utilize their public dollar use items, right? But also put in some protections that were not in the existing rules for those that find themselves in different situations. And so I'm really pleased with the work that was done here and appreciate, I know it's hard. I know it's hard for all of us to have all the emails and the comments when people maybe don't really understand what we were trying to achieve, right? So thank you for going through all of that and doing such a great job on this. So, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna take public comment on this item. Mr. Block. Sure, please, gotta hit the mic.
It's not like we can't hear you, but it's just.
Yes, and I can't read a crowd, and I don't know when to shut up, and advice from my wife, keep it short. As all of you know, all of us have grown up here. We were in South, Sheriff Furlong, everything. Town's changed a lot. The one thing I like about the ordinance, because I notice in Carson City, when you say conceptual idea, it's carved in stone, and nobody understands that. And when you say may, doesn't mean shall and will and instant arrest. I have utmost confidence in our sheriff's department. I was confused by a couple things, and that might bring up some ire with the citizens. Carson Now's article on March 14th, it said supervisors directed the Board of Health members to ask unsheltered individuals who call home a few things. And it says in there, out of 118 responses, another part says half of the 125 respondents, and then it was asked the last place they had lived, 137 respondents of Carson City. Is it 118? Is it 123? Is it 137? Nevada Appeal article yesterday, Health and Human Services point in time, 2024 point in time revealed 39 unsheltered individuals in Carson versus 68 in 23. And then it also goes on, the count was 31 in 2024 versus 62 in 2023. The lady from Knott's said 59 people. Talking to a guy that runs a facility and a nonprofit up on Long Street, says there's about 200 that they see, and 40%, about 40 of them approximately, perhaps maybe a little more, a little less, don't want help. They don't want services. They don't want to be, they don't want a job. They don't want to remain sober and not on drugs. So as you know, I go everywhere in this wheelchair. And, you know, I might well invite you guys to come down before a board meeting in July, down Washington Street. It's the only way there's handicap accessibility to my house. Robinson Street sucks. There's a lot of not good handicap accessibility, but there's a church up here that feeds people and they congregate right there. So I go back out in the street. Stewart and Washington's probably not the safest. When I come down from the library, there was only 4 there this morning, but they congregate right behind Smith's. They're all getting drunk and stoned or doing whatever, and there's no lights up along on Washington Street. You have to go in the parking lot behind Smith's in the sound wall, it was totally thrashed. Since I have 17 seconds, I also want to say that with some of the meetings that we've had with Health and Human Services, Mary Jane Ostrander has been amazing. I don't know if Josh Day is still employed with the city through Health and Human Services, but cleaning up some of the camps and doing that stuff is absolutely amazing. And I want to say thank you to the Carson City Fire Department who helped me get up off my floor and into bed last week. And, you know, whenever I see people yelling and screaming at cars, I call the Sheriff's Department and they're right on it. And they're also right on it when people are parked in the way of handicap ramps and stuff like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think I had Denny, come on up.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Denny French, Carson City. I'd like to suggest that I want to ditto Supervisor Horton's appreciation of the effort that was put on by District Attorney Pruitt. I think it was well done. I really appreciate Supervisors White going into it as depth, and Lisa Schutte, and of course, Stacy Jomi. My consideration is this: when a person is taken into custody or otherwise not able to get to their campsite as they would have normally done, and they're not there and they're not present, is there a way during the booking or the retainment or the detention of an individual where that individual could say, I've got a campsite and it's at such and such, I can't get there to clear it up in the time limit or in the actual moment to be able to deal with it? Is there a connectivity there for them to have access to some communication that would allow them to have some idea that a campsite that they might have set up will be taken down? Those kind of connections, but I appreciate the other considerations that will be maybe put into the ordinances. I would like to say that Carson City appeal paper put Carson supervisors to weigh ordinance prohibiting sleep camping in public. I think when it starts with sleep, especially under my circumstances, anywhere I get any kind of a nap before maybe going back to studying or enjoying other aspects of the park or watching squirrels or bugs, that's, I don't want to be kicked in the side by somebody that I've got in the way of because they tripped over me. I don't want to hurt that person and I don't want to be hurt. So there is some discretion where I will place myself. But I do appreciate the fact that the ordinance is considering the situations of homeless and those that might just be a little off key and settle against a wall where they might be on a sidewalk and just discretionary wake up and please move. So I appreciate the sheriff's response to homeless as far as my experience. I didn't get woke up by a sheriff, but I did nod off near the pool area over there. And I realized that that wasn't necessarily the most appropriate place, but I want to be out where people can see me. And if I nod off, it's not sprawled out like I've been murdered or something. So, but I thank you for the consideration and appreciate the time put into it.
Do I have other public comment? Come on up.
Good morning, Mike Riggs, representing the Downtown Business Association. And I just want to say thank you for putting some detail together on this. Our biggest complaint as business owners is having our businesses blocked. And I appreciate you guys taking the time and addressing this. Thank you.
Do I have further public comment? Come on.
Reverend Paul Larson, St. Paul's Lutheran Family here in Carson City. I rise on behalf of members of St. Paul's Lutheran Family to speak in opposition of this proposed ordinance. As a faith leader, I cannot support a measure that I still believe is cruel and unjust, an ordinance that seeks to criminalize something as basic as sleeping on a park bench. And the gaslighting and the blaming of people who are homeless is not the solution. Each week I preach to my congregation about recognizing the Christ in our neighbor and the welcoming of the stranger among us. And this ordinance does nothing to address the root issue of pervasive housing insecurity and people experiencing homelessness here in Carson City. Instead, it targets the most vulnerable members of our community. Rather than offering solutions, it places undue burdens on our city services, requiring them to police people who need a roof over their head, not a jail cell. From a fiscal conservative perspective, this ordinance is also deeply flawed as it increases cost to our city services and already strain our limited resources. As a person of faith and as a citizen of Carson, thank you for the attempts at making this a little bit more just, but I still cannot support this draconian ordinance, and I urge you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other? Okay. Green. Go backwards. He didn't turn it off. Turn
Change
it
it
off.
up, okay.
Just green to
We're
go. Yeah.
Good? Okay. Hi, my name is Molly McGregor. I am a social worker here in Carson City, and I echo a lot of what the Reverend has said. I'm also a long-term volunteer with Knott's. I think this is a cart horse issue, right? We don't have the services to push people into that we're criminalizing them for, right? We don't have a shelter in place for them to go to. So we are literally criminalizing people for having nowhere to go. And I understand and I hear the negotiations happening, and I really do appreciate that. But I work with a significant amount of families who just cannot afford the wait time that our services have. They can't afford the housing that is in existence, even the low income and affordable housing services that I know this board has worked really hard to put in place. Wait times are absolutely astronomical. I've had several families living, in tents on the streets, in RVs, and we're getting them into services. We're getting them on wait lists, but there's literally nowhere for them to go. And I'm sorry, but this is what I deal with every day. They're trying, and it's not a substance use issue for most of my families that I work with. They're literally just trying to live. And I urge you, I know we've been in conversation about a shelter, and I know the fear is if you build it, they will come, but bottom line is we have citizens here who are hurting. I don't even live in Carson City. I have a master's degree. I can't afford to live here. My husband has a career. We can't afford to live here. I understand the discretion in the up to $1,000 in fine, but the fact that that can happen, do you know how hard it is to get a house when you've just been in jail? Do you know how hard it is to get services when you have a misdemeanor or any charge, period? I really love the compassion that a lot of you have, but I'm Catholic. This is Lent. This is the time of forgiveness and love and understanding and repentance. And it's so ironic to me that this bill is coming up right before Easter. I see a lot of people on this board who identify as good Christians too. So please, I know there's a lot of compassion and heart in our law enforcement. Again, I work with them all the time. They do a great job. But we really need to understand that there have to be services in order to force folks into them. So thank you very much.
Do I have any other public comment? Okay, then I'm going to bring it back up here for final discussion. So I have that we're going to potentially remove the citation for 2.190, correct? We're going to have a small amendment in 8.03110, adding the paragraph B of subsection 1 as discussed on the record. In 13.02190, we're going to remove prohibited, to be clearer on that. Is there other ones that we want to have direct the district attorney's office to look at? So did we cover them? Any other discussion? Ready for a motion?
Yeah, I have a little more discussion, and I am ready for a motion, but the concerns that are brought up are heartfelt, and I feel them. I feel the dilemma. I think we all do. The conflicting experiences that folks in our community are having. Businesses who are experiencing one thing, people who are trying to go from point A to B and feel that it's a more difficult journey, or that they just don't feel comfortable, or folks wanting to use the library or different businesses and amenities in Carson. And that's difficult. It is difficult when people say, well, where do they go? There lies the $1 million question, where do they go? I don't see this ordinance as creating additional barriers, because those barriers are already there. We don't have a shelter. We do have a lot of amazing, or not a lot, but we have several amazing nonprofits and incredible volunteers who are giving their time and their love and their money and their energy and their sleep to help those in need. And I think that the direction that we as a community need to go to is continue to build those relationships and continue to build those resources and access to resource to help people in need truly be able to access services and be able to thrive. So we have our Survive, Stabilize, Thrive within Carson, and it's a process. Human beings, we make decisions, we get sidetracked, we have difficulties, we have other difficulties, we have bills we can't pay, we have lack of housing availability. There's so many variables. But I don't see this ordinance as creating added variables or barriers. I see it as a way to clarify and address some of the issues that are being faced by the community as a whole. It doesn't negate the efforts that we and that I personally am putting into addressing these other issues that are so important because these are our neighbors, these are people we care deeply about. And so I just wanted to put that on the record. It's this, in my opinion, ordinance is not an effort to discount homelessness. On the contrary, this really addresses several important issues and difficulties that our community is facing.
Mr. Yu, did you have additional comment to share?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to address another technical aspect of this bill. So as you were identifying and listing for the record the additional changes that we would be making in advance of second reading at the next meeting, it occurred to me that for this new section 8.03.100, which is in regards to the removal of unauthorized campsites as described in the lead line for subsection 4, where it establishes the minimum contents of the inventory form that's required to be posted prior to the removal of certain personal property. It's probably lacking, and I would propose this on the record. I was just going to go ahead and bring this forward, but since we're discussing it on the record, I thought I might as well share this. We should probably include as additional content the address and telephone number of the proper department for the person to contact to inquire about how to get that personal property, returned to that individual. So just, again, just a technical clarification for purposes of that draft.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So are we ready? Think. Who would like to make a motion? Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I move to approve the business impact statement as presented and introduce on first reading Bill number 101 with the following changes. Removal of the citation to Article 2, Section 2.190 from all locations with the additional reference and clarification in 8.03.110, Section 1. To the removal of the word prohibited in 13.02.190, and to the change to 8.03.100 subsection 4 to include language to provide the address and phone number for the department handling the removal of property, and any other non-substantive changes that the district attorney's office may need to make.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Let the record reflect that was unanimous. And since I do have a lot of nonprofits here, I do just want to say thank you. You guys are tremendous, and this community is lucky to have all of you. We really, really are. And I really want to stress something, that this board is very compassionate about wanting to help and utilizing dollars to do good works in the community, and we couldn't do it without the help of all of you volunteers and stuff, so thank you. Just, we don't get a lot of chances to say that on the record, so we want to put that out there and thank you for all that you do. Okay, we're going to move on now to agenda item 17, which is our non-action items. Nothing, anybody have anything under that? Supervisor Giomi.
Yeah, a few items from Convention and Tourism, just to keep you guys updated on stuff that's going on. A few tournaments coming up. The California Youth Shooting Sports Association is doing a event at the Trap Range in May. Comstock Shootout, which is a long time youth soccer tournament coming up end of April. That always brings a lot of folks to town. Statina's Pay Dirt, which is the gravel bike race in May this year, looking at least 500 people this year. And something near and dear to a few of us on this board, although I don't play anymore, is senior softball. The Sacramento region is coming up in May, and they're holding a couple of tournaments. And with the changes to the softball field, we're CTA is looking to partner with a lot of agencies to bring a lot more tournaments, but that's one of the first ones that should be coming up.
Maybe there should be another division beyond senior, just call it geriatric.
Yeah, I tell you, I played in I didn't play, but I helped organize a senior tournament years ago, and it was 50 plus, but they had a division for 70 plus, and there were some bad dudes that I would not have wanted to play against. We've got another motor coach tour. I brought one before, years ago. There were fairly frequent motor coach tours that would happen to the region. This is a motor coach tour that over a weekend coming up in June will spend time in Carson. Starting in Sacramento, they're taking 80 out to Wells and then coming 50 back. So they're going to hit a lot of Nevada, hit a lot of the history, and a lot of it is related to history. Railroad Museum, be stopping along Highway. The name of it is America's Loneliest Road. So there's that. Something I'm sure you're aware of, the Nevada State Prison is hosting a lock pickers tournament, or not tournament, conference. That's in September.
Yeah, that was like great.
Not a tournament, it's a conference. You probably know about that, but moderate number, well, they're all locksmiths, moderate number of attendees, 80 or so, but they believe they can make that an international event in the years to come, and you may know more about that.
Great.
So the outfit that is putting that on is actually out of Canada, and it goes well beyond locksmith activities. There is, they will have 4 cars out there from a junkyard training on extradition. They will be breaching cells and homes. And the craziest part of it, we will be, I don't know exactly good words to describe this, but there is a very high interest in jailhouse tattoos. And so a couple of local tattoo shops have been recruited to do tattoos in an actual jail cell. For some reason, that's a big deal.
Well, it isn't.
With good ink or which ink?
It isn't. It isn't on my list of things to do, but
No.
to each his own. CTA attended an event. This is great. I think it was in the San Francisco area, but it was promoting. It was at a climbing gym, but it was promoting climbing locations of the West. And obviously, we have a lot of climbing opportunities here in Nevada and the Eastern Sierra, and so that was in my estimation, a good place to attend. And then the state has put out the calendar year 24 visitor profile, which is on the CTA website if you want to look at it, but just a few highlights. 89% of our visitors are from out of state. 61% are repeat visitors. The average length of stay, the highest average length of stay is 1 day at 34%, but not far behind is more than 6 days. Nearly 30% of the people who come stay more than 6 days. I think that probably, and that was in a non-legislative year. Let's see, what else is of interest here? The top visiting metro areas, Sacramento, Stockton, Modesto is 1, LA is 2, San Francisco Bay Area is 3, Vegas is 4, and Salt Lake City is 5 in terms of the top 5. Anyway, some interesting stuff. I think the rest of this is, yeah, I think that's it. And I don't know if they're still in town, but a movie based off of a Amazon Prime series called Casa Grande was in town filming a feature-length film, which they have yet to determine if it will be a theatrical release or a direct-to-streaming release. But it stars Lou Diamond Phillips, who was in town. Let's see, they've been filming in Carson City, Washoe Valley, in Genoa, and one of the reasons is we made a change to our permitting process for filmmaking, and that's what brought them here to Carson City, to allow them to have this as their home base. And so I suspect they're done now, but about 600 room nights we had from that movie. So they're still in town.
And I'm
Yeah.
having lunch with them, so I
Okay.
can't
With
wait
Lou?
to meet.
With Lou?
Yes, I
You and Lou
am.
are having lunch?
We
Wow,
are.
look at that. Good for you.
Yeah. So
Anyway,
today's
I
their
wanted
day in
to
Carson City.
specifically call out Hope because they called her out as being very helpful, and that filmmaking industry is interesting because you know, stuff that you don't think that they would be using for a backdrop, they use, and it's when you're looking at a screen, all you need, that screen is the only view. So it could be anything, Yeah. So anyway, it's exciting and a lot of stuff happened in our little town.
So, and please tell the team that did what was it, Winter Charm? Whatever that,
That
what
was
a lot of
phenomenal.
fantastic, yeah, I just wanted to have you please pass that on, how many
I will.
stupendous comments I get from all over the place. I was at an event last night from people from Reno and all these
Yeah.
other, Sacramento and some things. And let me tell you, they were happy to tell me all about the movie. And so I think that marketing movie is working.
Yeah, and we're gonna, CTA is gonna use it. They've already taken some 30-second snippets out of that. They're using that in social media. They'll probably use it again next winter
really
before it gets put away. But it was very well done.
So, Supervisor Schutte.
I just wanted to give a shout out to the Sheriff's Department. I stopped by Boys and Girls Club yesterday for the shaving of the beards, and it was wonderful. And to the barbers who donated their time and were there, kind of coaching the kiddos and helping the kids, and it was just, oh my goodness. They were just being so careful, those kids, but it was really wonderful because especially after one of the shave, and then afterwards, there's these little hairs and little mist spots. But it was such a fun and joyful and positive experience. A great fundraiser. The kids really loved it. They earned over $7,000. It was like $7,132 or something. So that was wonderful. It was really fun.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anybody else then.
I just wanted to call out the fire department supervisor Horton, myself, and you, Mayor, and of course, city manager, attended the fire department's annual award ceremony, and it was just good. Honored the folks who got promoted, but, more importantly, honored the actions that fire department took to save lives in our community, either through EMS or fire responses. And so just wanted to give them a call out and thanks for that annual event.
Absolutely great event. Okay, with that, we will move to final public comment. It's also final.
Thank you, Mayor. Denny French, Supervisors. I'd like to put into your consideration box as the artificial turf agenda is moving forward, that a consideration on posting those locations where artificial turf and infill and such relate, as well as those things on parks of natural grass that affect those lawns and how the individuals will be utilizing them and being exposed to. On natural grass, you will have the herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides, and people should know that. There should be postings on any city property, whether it's a park or open space that does have those situations. When something's being sprayed, it should be posted at the time, and I think that's the usual set and understanding. But I feel that on artificial turf, there should be a stationary presence of a sign suggesting these articles are involved in this material. If you have allergies towards this, you will not want to play. If you have considerations about this, you should not. And some regulations of timing, temperatures, and regulations on how often they're checked, how much the density's checked, and different things of the fields. Those things should be posted to keep us, if nothing else, advisory and educating the folks that are using it, but also for litigation, or at least to subtract a concern that a person's going to be on there not knowing the heat situation or not understanding the materials involved. So I think for litigation alone, it would behoove us to have those postings available and done with very strict, like this we've done as was put forward as far as regulating sleep and camping and campsites and locations. And I think no less diligence should be taken in designing such so that it will not only protect and educate the individuals using the fields, but it will protect and have the city in a state of, we let you know. Now, I'm not real thrilled with the fact that certain groups seem to have more say in some things, and yes, the players have a choice to play, but the society here and the community here can't regulate what will happen with that water that comes off that field. That affects me, and I'm not a player. I will not probably utilize those fields. And the air, I will not be a player. I will not utilize those fields, but I will have results from the heat that those situations put off. And so it's great to have players involved in having an opinion as individuals, but as a group, they should not have any more weight than each individual in the rest of the community, nor should, I can't go on, my time is up, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other final public comment? Okay. Seeing that none then, if there's no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all for International Happiness Day. Okay.